Hello, third graders. This is Unit 5, Light and Sound. We're continuing, this is Lesson 3, and we're learning about refraction and lenses. Here's some words you'll hear throughout the read aloud. Binoculars, it's a noun, it's a thing. A tool made of a pair of tubes with lenses or curved pieces of glass at both ends that allows someone to better see something that is far away. Instruments are mechanical or electronic tools designed and used for specific purposes. They have a job to do. They have something specific that they do. A lens is a noun, a specially curved piece of glass or plastic used in tools and instruments such as glasses, cameras, binoculars, etc., that makes an object seem larger and closer by focusing rays of light together, or that makes an object seem smaller and farther away by spreading rays of light apart. Microscopes is an instrument that uses lenses or curved pieces of glass to magnify objects so they appear larger and easier to see. Microscope. Opaque is an adjective. Opaque means it describes a material that absorbs light and prevents it from shining through, not transparent. Opaque. Refraction, the act of light changing direction or bending as it travels through different objects or substances. And then a telescope is kind of the opposite of a microscope. Instruments constructed from long tubes with lenses or curved pieces of glass at each end that allow people to see distant objects such as stars and planets. Let you see something far away, where a microscope lets you see something close. But they both make things seem closer and bigger. Translucent is an adjective, it's a descriptive word. Describes an object that allows some light to pass through so that you are able to see the form of an object but not a clear image. And then transparent describes an object that is clear, allowing most light to pass through for a clear view of what is on the other side. So this story that we've been talking about is a narrative, right? So it's a story that's been written. Narrative's another way to say story. And so we can talk about the elements of a story. So who are the characters we've learned about so far? We've met Jack and Samuel and Samuel's dog, Alfie, right? And then Samuel starts talking about his grandkids and how they're about to take them somewhere. So I think we'll meet some secondary characters today. So think about, what is the setting of this story? Our last story took place along the banks of the Hudson River while Jack and Samuel were fishing. Where does this story take place? What season is it? What time of day is it? That's all part of the setting. From which point of view is this story told? Is a character in the story telling the story? Is a character outside the story telling the story? Last time a character outside the story was telling the story, so it was in third person. Someone outside was telling it, was the narrator. We've learned about light waves and how they travel in straight lines in rays. We've learned about what it means for light to be transmitted, absorbed, and reflected, right? Transmitted means it goes through it. Absorbed means it goes into it. And reflected means it shines back like a mirror. And then we learned the 3 types of mirrors, right? We have plane mirrors, which are flat. Convex mirrors, which are domed-like, and it's like the outside of a dome, and concave, which is like the inside of a dome. We're going to talk more about that today and what is different about those types of mirrors. The next day, Samuel was up bright and early. He had begun the day by painting in the garden, but as his eyes grew tired, he decided to put down his paintbrush and go for a walk in the woods with Alfie. Samuel loved to observe the perfectly straight shafts of light as they burst through the tree canopy in the woodland. Have you ever been in the woods and you see the the shining burst of light, right? The rays of light coming down. You can definitely tell it's a straight line when you see that, just like in this picture. Later, when they had returned from their walk, Samuel passed several hours scrapbooking photographs of his grandchildren. Before he knew it, it was late in the afternoon. "Granddad, Granddad, we're here," came the sound of two young voices. "We," replied Samuel, joking. "How come there are two of you?" Two smiling children walked toward Samuel as he sat in his favorite armchair. One of the children was a girl about 11 years of age. She was tall and skinny and had braided brown hair. Her face was awash with freckles. She was carrying a large chocolate cake. The other child was a boy about 8 years old. He too had brown hair, and he wore a bright red t-shirt that said, "Save trees, avoid homework." It was obvious that they were brother and sister. They were two of Samuel's 4 grandchildren. "Mom walked us to the garden gate. She says she'll stop by later for dinner after we've been to the fair. She's going to bring us a meatloaf that she made," said the girl whose name was Amy. Samuel grimaced. "Mom says she knows that you don't like meatloaf, but you have to eat it anyway because it's good for you," said the boy, who was clearly missing his 2 front teeth. "Oh, she did she?" replied Samuel. "Yep," said the boy. "How come you're here?" said Samuel, laughing. "Did you make that chocolate cake?" The boy, whose name was Ethan, smiled boldly. "I didn't make it, but I was the one who said that should be a double chocolate cake and not just chocolate," explained Ethan. "Oh, very well. I guess that's a good enough reason for you to come to the fair with Amy and me," said Samuel, teasing his grandson. "Let's go put the cake in the kitchen." In the kitchen, Samuel poured 2 glasses of ice-cold water and placed a striped straw in each glass. "Have a cold drink before we go," Samuel instructed. Moments later, they heard the sound of a very loud voice. "Samuel," yelled Jack, "you need to do something about that dog. He's running off with my hat again." Samuel and the children burst out laughing. At that moment, Jack appeared in the kitchen looking a little flushed. "Why, if it isn't my favorite children!" Jack exclaimed. Samuel poured 2 more glasses of water and joined his guest at the kitchen table. All 4 sat and chatted and sipped their drinks. "Grandpa," said Ethan, "why does it look like the straw is separated when it meets the water? See, the part of the straw in the water is magnified and looks like it's bent." "That's a really good question, Ethan," replied Samuel eagerly. "Well, where should I begin?" "This could take a while," warned Jack, smiling the tiniest bit. "You may have learned by now that light can be transmitted or passed through some objects but not others," began Samuel. "Objects that most light can pass through, such as eyeglasses or an empty glass, are called transparent, and objects that light cannot pass through, such as a tackle box or Jack's hat, are called opaque." "My hat's been called worse," Jack shouted. Amy and Ethan giggled. "What about objects that some light can go through, like frosted glass and tracing paper?" asked Amy. "I think there's a name for those too." "Yes," said Samuel. "Those objects are called translucent. They let a little bit of light pass through, and it scatters or spreads out, causing the objects you see through them to look fuzzy." "Cool!" exclaimed Ethan. "We're about to start learning all this stuff in 3rd grade." "Yeah, it is cool," joined in Amy. "And now you'll be a little ahead, Ethan." "You may have also learned," continued Samuel, "that when light waves travel through different transparent substances, such as through the air and then through a drinking glass, or through a glass and then through the water, they change speed," explained Samuel. Amy nodded. "I remember learning that When a light wave suddenly changes speed, it quickly changes its direction and looks like it's bending. That's why when you look into a river and see fish, they seem closer to the surface than they actually are. Does that apply to dogs too? Yelled Jack, remember catching Alfie. The children looked at Jack with puzzled expressions. Oh, it's a long story, said Samuel, laughing. To return to your question, Ethan, that's exactly why a straw standing in a glass of water appears to bend or even break apart as it enters the water. This sudden change of speed and direction of the light wave is called refraction. Refraction? Repeated Ethan. Samuel nodded and continued. In fact, the refraction of light is how a concave and convex lens works in many instruments or tools that we use. Do you remember what substance shown in the image is translucent, letting some light pass through? This image right here, right? It's the lemonade that's translucent. So artists use the translucent qualities of stained glass to create beautiful windows. A lens is a curved, transparent piece of glass. Concave, convex lenses are shaped like concave and convex mirrors, but they have a different function. They look at a mirror, but you look at a mirror, but through a lens. Here's some pictures of some lenses and how the rays go through. Samuel went on. A convex lens curves outward so that it is thicker in the middle than at the edges. Rays of light passing through a convex lens are forced to change direction and move towards each other, making things look bigger if they are close enough to the lens. Convex lenses are used in instruments such as microscopes, magnifying glasses, binoculars, telescopes, and cameras. The lenses in my eyeglasses are convex to help me see close images better when I'm painting. Samuel continued. On the other hand, a concave lens curves inward like a cave and is thinner in the middle than at the edges. Light rays passing through a concave lens are forced to change direction and move away from each other, making things look smaller. Cameras use lenses to focus the light rays inside the camera to record an image. Lenses are also used in security cameras and peepholes that are in some doors to help the background view look wider and easier to see. I don't want to interrupt your lecture, Samuel, but I've heard it's going to be busy at the fair tonight, so we should get going, said Jack as he finished his drink. Good point, Jack. We'd better get ourselves out of here. Yeah, yelled Ethan excitedly. I want us all to go on the chairplanes. We'll have to see about that, replied Jack. I need to be able to walk home from the fair in one piece, not a million zillion pieces. The two children laughed at Jack, and then Ethan ran off to rescue Jack's hat from Alfie. 15 minutes later, having arrived at the fair, they promptly bought a roll of tickets for various rides, as well as 4 helpings of cotton candy. They stood together for a short time, eating the sweet cotton candy and observing all the fun of the fair. Finally, Amy said, "What shall we do first?" "I have a special request," said Samuel. "I have been teaching Jack about the science of light. I have promised him a trip to the House of Mirrors." "It was more like a threat," retorted Jack. The 2 children laughed at Jack's grumpy reply. "The House of Mirrors is so much fun," exclaimed Amy. "Let's go," cried Ethan, as he grabbed his grandfather's hand, and with that the 4 of them made their way toward the giant red, white, and blue sign that says, "Welcome to the House of Mirrors." A man dressed like a clown stood at the entrance. He smiled and took their tickets. Upon entering the partly wooden, partly tinted structure, they discovered an array or selection of distortion mirrors. As they stood in front of each mirror, they witnessed a variety of optical illusions. "I have a head shaped like a giant melon," pronounced Jack. "This is so cool," said Ethan eagerly, looking into the mirror that had convex and concave parts. "Look, I'm really tall and skinny." "I'm short and really, really wide," exclaimed Amy, looking at her reflection in the mirror. How is this possible? How is this possible? Asked Ethan as he observed his new shape. Well, began Samuel, I'm glad you asked that question, Ethan. Oh no, I sense another speech, said Jack, and with that Jack walked towards the entrance of the mirrored maze. You're going to miss my talk, said Samuel as he watched Jack walk away. That's fine with me, Jack replied. Actually, it's a very simple concept, explained Samuel, ignoring Jack's comment. Mirrors are made of reflective material. Each one of these mirrors has a different shape. Depending on the shape of the mirror, it can be used to bring light rays together or spread them apart. Some of these mirrors have concave and convex parts. Some are slightly twisted and some are even folded. Samuel continued. Generally, convex mirrors make images look smaller, whereas concave mirrors can make images look larger. When you put them together, you get some really funny shapes. So different mirrors do different things, said Ethan, who had been listening intently to his grandfather. Yes. For example, continued Samuel, a convex mirror like the ones on the side of your school bus curve outward so that rays of light striking them are forced to change direction and move away from each other, making distant things look smaller and the background wider. This makes the bus driver see more area around the bus. Objects very close to these mirrors may look wider and distorted. Cool, exclaimed Ethan. It is cool, Samuel agreed. In comparison, a concave mirror like the large makeup mirror your mother has or the shaving mirror your father has, curves inward so that light rays hitting it are forced to change direction and move towards each other and make things look larger, explained Samuel. I get it, exclaimed Amy happily. When light strikes either a concave or a convex mirror, it is reflected in different ways at different angles. Right on the button, said Samuel. Light reflects differently in each mirror in such a way that it alters the view. The waves of light provide a clear but altered image. Hey, you guys, I'm kind of lost in here, cried a very loud voice. It was Jack. So anytime you're ready, I'd welcome to be rescued. The children laughed and out loud. Well, you did go wandering off, yelled back Samuel. Hold on, we're on our way. Samuel and the grandchildren made their way towards the entrance to the mirrored maze. The maze was a series of narrow, mirrored corridors. The trick was to find an opening into a new corridor, and if you followed the path correctly, you would eventually find your way out. However, because the walls were made entirely out of framed mirrors, it was difficult to find the openings, and people had been known to walk round and round for a very long time. Eventually, Samuel, Amy, and Ethan found Jack. They basically followed the sound of his very loud complaints. Once they were all together, they put Ethan in charge of finding the way out. It didn't take him long to figure out the way to the exit. Once out of the maze, they spent the rest of the evening enjoying the fun of the fair. The children went on a variety of rides. They also ate ice cream and promised not to tell their mother that they had dessert before dinner. Finally, it was time to go. Samuel had promised his daughter Anna that the children would be home in time for dinner. Time to go, children, said Samuel softly. Oh, Granddad, exclaimed Ethan, we haven't been on the chairplanes. Please, can we go on them, please? Pleaded Ethan. What do you say, Jack? Are you up for a little ride through the cool evening air? Said Samuel. Samuel, if I don't make it back alive, are you prepared to feed my fish? Yelled Jack. No problem, I'll take real good care of them, replied Samuel calmly. Okay, then let's do it. They reached the chairplane's ride just as it had stopped. They found 4 chairs all in a row and seated themselves. They fastened the chain across the front of the seat and waited for the ride to begin. Several minutes later, they began to move through the air in perfect circles. Slowly, they rose higher and higher into the air as fairground music began to play. Samuel and Jack looked at the children's eager faces and smiled with content. So where do the characters go in today's story? the carnival, or the fair. What is the difference between a transparent object and an opaque object? Transparent objects allow light to pass through, and opaque objects do not. Can you name an example of a transparent object? Something like glasses or a window. Can you name an example of an opaque object? Like a book or metal or tree trunk. What happens to light when it encounters a translucent object? Some light passes through and some light is scattered. Can you name an example of a translucent object? Something like a glass window, a stained glass window, wax paper, loosely woven cloth, frosted glass, something that you can kind of see through but not all the way through. What happens in the read aloud when the straw is placed in the glass of water? The straw looks separated, magnified, and bent. Is the straw actually bending in the water or separated? No, it's not. What causes the straw to look that way? Light moving from one material to another is refracted or bent. What is a lens? A lens is a curved piece of transparent glass or plastic that focuses together or spreads apart rays of light. What does a convex lens look like? It curves outward towards the viewer so that it is thicker in the middle than at the edges. What does a concave lens look like? It curves inward away from the viewer so that it is thinner in the middle than at the edges. What are some instruments that use lenses that you heard about in today's read aloud? Magnifying glasses, binoculars, microscopes, telescopes, security cameras, peepholes, and eyeglasses. You heard that the house of mirrors in the story had distortion mirrors with different convex and concave parts. What does Ethan see when he looks at his reflection in one of the distortion mirrors? He looks tall and skinny. What about Amy? What does she see when she looks in the distortion mirrors? She looks short and wide. What type of mirror is flat and has as accurate a reflection as possible? A plane mirror. Our words for today are opaque, translucent, and transparent. In the read aloud, you heard objects that most light can pass through, such as eyeglasses or a window, are called transparent. Objects that let a little bit of light pass through, such as some liquids or stained glass, are translucent. And objects that light cannot pass through, such as a tackle box or Jack's hat, are called opaque. Say the words opaque, translucent, and transparent. If something is opaque, it prevents light from shining through, which makes it impossible to see through it. If something is translucent, it lets some light pass through, which makes a blurry image. If something is transparent, it allows most light to shine through, making it possible to see a clear image through it. All right, that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed learning more about lenses and mirrors and light.